Today, I'm excited to have you here, Kim. And Kim is a marriage family therapist. And I wanted to uh, get you here because so much of what I deal with clients is relating to emotions and stress and history, family history, and I wanted to get some of your thoughts and talk a little bit about this with you and share this material as well with the clients that I work with in hopes that there will be some benefit to them and that they could also possibly reach out to you or someone in your profession if there's material that they want to dig into more. First of all, from your perspective, Kim, what is the role of counseling and therapy as it relates to finances?
Yeah, so we know that in couples, there's usually a couple different things that couples fight about, and I'm sure that you see this all the time.
Yeah.
And one of the major ones is usually money. You'll usually have somebody that overspends or spends a little bit more, and then somebody that's a little bit more conservative. And so it shows up super easy all the time, right?
Yeah. Yep. Well, one of the things that I think about too is there's always major decisions that need to be made throughout lifetime. Maybe there's 100 big decisions, whether it's purchases or life changes. How does stress and anxiety and emotions play into those decisions?
Yeah. So when we have really big decisions to make, whether we're getting married, we're getting divorced, somebody passes away, like these are really high emotional times in our lives, our brains do things that are a little bit different. It's like we can be focused in one thing, but then something really big happens. It's like our brain goes offline. And so when that happens, we just need to realize, where are we on a scale of 1 to 10? Is this like lower stress or is this like chaotic stress? And so if we can recognize that in our bodies, a divorce, that can be really, really high. And so if we are at that higher level of stress, our prefrontal cortex, the front part of our brain, goes offline. And now we're all emotion. We're just deciding, making these big decisions, not logically, but from a place of it could be panic, fear, all these different things, survival, where we're not even really aware of it, but it really plays into these really big decisions if we're not aware of like what our body's doing.
I'm glad you mentioned a couple of those. What are some of the big life events that can influence our emotions? And you mentioned divorce. What are some of the other ones?
Yeah, divorce, when somebody passes away, even if, let's say, you're not having divorce and you've been married a long time, but for some reason, somebody's bringing up money. Now, all of a sudden, that can start to cause a little bit of stress. And then you keep talking about, I'm going to go buy this, the one that overspends a little bit more. I'm going to go buy this. The one that doesn't, like stuff starts happening in their body. And they all of a sudden, it's like, oh, okay, I'm not feeling okay. What are you doing? And then we start to get into you always do this, you never do that. And I'm sure you're laughing because I'm sure you've heard it.
Always and never comes into emotional conversations, right?
Yes, that's when your frontal part of your brain, you're not logical anymore. We need to take a step back. We need to take a deep breath. We need to reorient ourselves to what's really happening, because now when those emotions kick in, it's like, oh, am I really going to make, this decision? And then their emotion stirs up, which stirs up the other person. And now they get into this cycle. So even if it's not these really big, I'm going to get a divorce, or somebody's passed away, or I'm buying a new home, I'm changing jobs, I've lost my job, the stock market has crashed, the stock market's doing really good. Like all of those big things really play into how secure I feel in life. Is my identity being questioned, let's say?
Yeah. Well, I like that you brought up the tool of asking yourself, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how emotional am I about this, about whatever this is? What about for the people around that person. Like if it's a child, if it's a spouse, if it's a life partner, a consultant, what's a good way of engaging with that person to help get to the emotional state of that person if you can see it?
Mm-hmm. So our bodies have a physiological reaction to stress. And if you're the outside person looking in and you notice that somebody's really distressed and it's over money, and let's say that it's you, if they've reached a 10 and you can kind of see that 10, it's going to be very hard for the person to hear you because our ears have muscles and they close.
Mm.
So if you've ever been in a situation where something really scary is happening, you don't really hear what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Like the
You're
world
right.
gets quiet. Or I've noticed this, like when I'm backing the car up, I need to turn the radio down because I need to focus, right?
Yeah.
Because those muscles, they really close. And so now I can't hear what you're saying. And so even at a 10, to let them know, hey, let's not make any big decisions right now. Let's just try to take a deep breath. And we can come back to this later. And so approaching it from noticing when somebody's not at a 10.
Mm.
Let's say that they're on a scale of 1 to 10, they're at a 4. That's when you're really able to engage with them and say, hey, what's going on with you? I'm noticing that something's coming up. You're causing them to stop and pause. What is going on? Because if Adam can see it, something's happening within me. Catching it as early as you can before they get to that 10.
Oh, good.
Help.
I like the way you say that. I notice something's going on in you. So it's not really a question or a judgment. It's just, hey, I notice something.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yes.
Love it. Well, on a stress scale of normal to chaotic, like how can you tell the difference? Like, I mean, what are, I guess, ways you can kind of signal, hey, this is maybe a 10 or this is normal?
Sure. So when it's on the lower end, you'll have clarity. And we do want some level of stress because that does give us a little bit of an edge. And so if you're at the lower end of the 10, you can think clearly, you can, start to feel your heart starting to pound a little bit, but you know that you're still making logical decisions. Once you reach that 10, your heart's pounding really fast. There's a sense of urgency. I have to do something right now. I have to make a decision right now. And it's almost like a panicky feeling. And so noticing those two, am I making a decision out of panic or urgency? Or am I able to have clarity in the moment and make a good decision that your body's going to tell you where you're at? Sometimes when we haven't been paying attention to what's going on in our body, we can be living between a 7 and a 10 all the time and not even know that we're living there. So just slowing things down. And so for you, like if you notice that your clients are coming in and they're very panicky, it's like, okay, maybe right now is not the time. Why don't you come back in an hour? Or, let's slow this down for a couple of days. We don't have to make a decision right now. You can stay clear.
I like that of, hey, is this normal, like clarity type of situation, or is this a little more of a sense of urgency type of, panic? Yeah, I like that. Is there any other self-awareness tools that you like to talk about?
I remember my own therapist telling me, think about what you're thinking about. And that really brought to mind, like, I go around making all these decisions. I'm not even really thinking. But if I slow it down, what am I thinking about right now? What's causing me to think this way? That's a really good tool just to practice on the daily. And then there's another one, just checking in with yourself. There are apps that you can do. There's like just setting a timer twice a day, just checking in with yourself, even if nothing's happening. Let's say you're at the office, you're working, and your timer goes off. It's 10 in the morning. You're going to check in. Am I holding tension in my shoulders? Am I breathing shallow? Am I relaxed? Just checking in. Okay, if I'm not relaxed, if I am holding tension in my shoulders, how come? What's going on that's causing me to feel this tightness? Or what's going on that's making me feel relaxed or joy, these different things. So let's say that you check in again in the morning and then in the evening, and your evening check-in is usually, let's say, more relaxed. Okay, what can I do more of in the day that I'm doing in the evening to help me to stay a little bit more relaxed if I do run maybe a little bit more anxious earlier in the day?
Wow. Those are good suggestions. And I think just checking in with yourself, asking questions, paying attention to the signals of your body and how you're breathing and how relaxed, that's great. So, yeah.
I teach an emotions class often in different settings. And I'll ask them, what does joy feel like? I don't know. Or what does sadness feel like? Heavy? Yeah. Sometimes I'll ask people, what does anxiety feel like? It feels like anxiety. Yeah. What does that mean? And so it's like slowing it down and being able to identify when I'm happy, my body's doing something always. When I'm angry, my body's tense. Maybe my fists get clenched. Just knowing those little different things that are happening within you with every emotion, then you're able to tell, oh, anxiety feels like this. You can catch it a little earlier before you go from a 0 to a 10. You're able to be aware when I am angry, my heart's pounding really, really fast. Or I get really, really tense. I get hot. My feet get cold. My feet get hot. Our bodies are always sending us signals. It's just paying attention to them. And that goes back to what are you thinking about? Thinking about that.
Wow. Well, very good. Well, you know a lot more about emotions and regulation than I probably ever will. But from what I think about, like from a financial perspective, as people are living their lives and dealing with decisions, making decisions, worried about saving, investing, spending, big purchases, yes, or being affected by the market, or life events, losses, and whatnot. What are from a therapist's point of view, like what role does therapy play in this process of making these decisions and dealing with emotions?
So with money, we know that it's usually not about money. Money usually brings a story. And so knowing what was money like growing up for me or for my spouse, let's say that I grew up in a home where my parents were very generous and I saw generosity as a good thing. And let's say that my partner comes from a home where people weren't very generous and maybe there is more scarcity. And so now he's going to be, we need to be, more conservative with our money. And so just paying attention to that, knowing what is the story behind money for me, for my spouse. And that's a conversation that most couples don't have when they meet. It's like, what if couples could ask themselves, as they're dating, as they're going along in life, how was money like for you growing up? And knowing that meaning, because that meaning now gives it context in today. And so if let's say money is, it's meant to be spent and you only live once and it gives me the feeling of freedom. Okay. And now I have a spouse telling me, no, don't be spending so much. Now you're telling me what to do. And now you're trying to control me. And it's all about money, numbers, a budget, but there's so much underneath it.
Good point. You're right about that. And everyone may have come from a background that's completely different and still have a partner that came from a different place. So from your perspective, what are some warning signs that people are making decisions that are from a place of stress or chaos versus clarity?
So often when people are making those decisions, they're not, let's say that they are at a 10, that they are in a chaos mode. They're no longer reaching out to you or to anybody else. They're not trying to gain insight from others. That's usually a place of we're in chaos. So now I'm isolating myself. I'm not getting, and I'm only in my mind, oh my gosh, this is going to happen and this is going to happen. And when we don't get that outside source, that outside help, we have no other meaning other than our own. We can't get clarity when we're in that chaotic stage. But if we haven't reached that chaotic stage and we reach out to an outside source, I reach out to you. Hey, Adam, I noticed the stock market is doing this. I'm getting a little nervous. You can provide me your clarity. It's like you're lending me your way, like your calmness, your peace. You're lending it to me. And because I trust you and I know that you're going to be on my side, now that chaos can come down a little bit. But when we don't reach out, and that's usually a sign, is when we start to isolate, make decisions on our own, not gain wisdom from others, that's usually a sign that, they could be overspending, not making the right decisions. I'm trying to think when others are, when they're usually calm, they'll check in with their partner. Hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? Okay. We know that we're on the same playing field. It's the isolation that usually gets us.
Okay. Good points. So being collaborative, discussing, checking in with partner, those are signs of clarity versus stress. Great. Love it. Well, how about identifying healthy versus unhealthy anxiety?
Yeah. So there was a study that was done with students. It was 3 sets of students. One student was like, I don't need to study. I don't need to do any of this. I'm not even going to worry about it. Another set of students was like, this makes me a little bit nervous. I'm going to study a little bit more. What else can I be doing to prepare? And then there was another one that was full-blown panic. Oh my gosh, I can't retain any information. I'm going to not do well on the test. And so they're totally chaotic. And so when they go to take the test, they looked at the people that did the study, looked at how did each of the groups do. The group that was like, whatever, I've got this, that they had no anxiety, they didn't do very well. The people that were completely panicking, of course, they did not do well. But the people that did panic just a little bit, because that stress gives us a little bit of an edge. It gives us a little bit of, that clarity that we're looking for. And because they were a little bit nervous, a little bit anxious, they were able to do better on the test. So it's just knowing your body signals. If I'm, I don't care about this, I don't even care about what's going on, that's usually not a sign of good stress. We do want a little bit. So we do want that clarity. It does give us an edge. So if I'm stressed out about creating a podcast, and now I'm overwhelmed and I feel that urgency and I need to go do all the right things and get all the right cameras and all the right microphones. Okay, I might not be coming from a place where I'm calm and it's a good stress, because now I'm flooded. I'm overwhelmed with my emotions and I'm letting fear take over. But if I'm able to stay calm, it's like, okay, I do need to do some research. I am nervous about this because this is new. And of course, anything new usually causes anxiety.
Yeah.
It just helps us to know, okay, if I have a little bit of anxiety, I know that I'm going to do a little bit of research and it's going to help me stay clear.
That's an interesting story about the study, and kind of illustrating that it's both extremes aren't really good for us. Like, and it's finding that balance of like having a little bit of stress, but not too much. So that is interesting. And I do know that it is good to feel something and want to perform, either do the homework, right? Or, prepare for something, for instance, or take a conversation seriously versus be completely checked out. So yeah. And same with financial decisions. It's probably important to realize that this could be have a major impact down the road, or impact their wealth, for instance.
Exactly. Thinking about, if I make this decision right now, am I clear-minded? Am I thinking clearly? Or, am I just out of chaos? Or is this an impulsive purchase? Slowing it down, how is this going to affect my future? Because that's wisdom.
Yeah.
What we do now affects our future, and that future one day will become our past.
Yeah, good point. Well, one thing I wanted to ask you is, why do some things related to finances become so personal?
Mm-hmm.
Because I have seen that be the case. I'm guessing you have too.
Mm-hmm.
Like when does it seem to tie in like self-worth and deeper emotional issues?
Mm-hmm. All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Yes. There's something about money that does, money can represent who we are. It can represent security. It can represent autonomy. So there's always a meaning behind money, because somewhere along the line, we learned money either, represents who I am. Keeping Up with the Kardashians is a perfect example. If that show was so successful, because it's true, there was something about that, we're comparing ourselves, society, social media, like magnified that. And now, oh my gosh, they have this, I want that. And whatever I had was not good enough now. And so it's hard not to tie money to our worth, to status, to security. It's very, very hard. We have to often realize, okay, how am I looking at money? It's thinking about what you're thinking about. And am I letting my wealth define me? Am I letting my wealth, let people know this is the status and this is who I am, and without my money, I'm going to lose that status? We see that happen all the time.
Yeah, good point. And I one of the examples of that I think about as in this discussion is, and I've seen this happen quite a few times, where people are really, really driven to buy that big house that maybe they really shouldn't be buying, or maybe it's kind of robbing them of some of their other goals, but they feel so driven to have that big, showy, gorgeous house. And how would someone separate, like, hey, this is just, want a nice house, versus like maybe there's some deeper self-worth issues that they're trying to deal with?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question, because we don't realize that we're being driven to do something. So it's like our body's working against us, because dopamine tells us, go get it. Often people think that dopamine is like, oh, dopamine's what it's making me feel good. But no, dopamine is the part in your brain that says, I want that. Because in the past, whenever you've made a big purchase, getting it, going there, without dopamine, we're going to go hungry. We're not going to survive. So dopamine serves a purpose. But when we're not able to realize, I'm being driven by dopamine, and it's telling me to go get this house, because if I get this house, then that's going to say, I've arrived, I've made it, I'm successful. This house is going to do it for me. And then we get the house, and it's like, well, on to the next. Because now that big house, you start at an apartment that's 600 square feet, and then you move up to 1,500 square feet, and then 3,000, 10,000. And that 10,000 square foot home is now baseline. And now you want the 20,000 square foot home, because 10,000 is just, now I'm used to it. And so we have to fight really hard against that, because it's natural for us to have that dopamine. Dopamine served a purpose. It helps us to survive. It helps us to be motivated. It has a place, but when it's driving us and feeding that identity, it makes it very hard to separate, but it is possible.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you mentioned the dopamine, because my first thought is it's like a need to validate themselves, like maybe some childhood thing there, or to show other people status. But I didn't even really think about the dopamine because there is that hit there, and that seeking and wanting to accomplish that feeling of excitement, that rush of that even just thinking about the big gorgeous house probably gives someone. And another thing that is probably like that it reminds me of too, especially living here in Las Vegas, is sometimes people struggle with gambling, and I'm thinking that has very much a dopamine or some sort of chemical rush that goes with it too, that kind of takes away some of the logic, and in that case, what role does therapy play dealing with dopamine or self-worth issues or validation?
So they can go hand in hand. Like you were saying, it can be playing into childhood or unresolved things that have been happening. If I get the house, then it'll mean that I am successful or that I am worth it or that I am good enough. Like that underlying can be there, and it can be driven by dopamine. And so if we don't know that we have these wounds within us, then we'll be chasing that, just like with gambling. We're chasing, I'm going to get that big hit. I'm going to win big, just like I did last time. And so in therapy, depending on, what's coming up, but gambling also, there's usually something underlying. And so like whenever I have couples, it's like, their behavior sits up high. It's what's screaming. But the vulnerability down low, that's what we want to get at. And so often if it is, the house, I'm going to get the house. If I could just make this, $10 more million or however much, whatever our goal is, it's the underlying, like what's at the root of that? If you do get the $10 million or this job or this house or the car, what does that mean to you? What will that say about you? And discovering that, okay, if I get the house, then that'll mean that I'm successful. What does successful look like? And just kind of digging a little bit, we can get to, often I feel like I'm just not good enough. And, maybe I'm going to be loved more. Maybe my spouse is going to love me even more if I can, provide this security. And growing up, maybe I had to earn love, and I earn love by working really hard. And so now I'm working really hard and I'm being successful. I'm getting all this money. People are validating me. And it's just validating that feel of, you are good enough. Oh, I am. They're telling me. So I'm going to just work that much harder. But in reality, it's like we're chasing and chasing and chasing and never really arriving because that wound is still there.
Wow. I love this conversation. I don't think people have it enough.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I think so often these life decisions and things happen, even, whether someone's alone or someone's in a relationship and families, without like, hey, why don't, let's go a little bit deeper here.
Yeah. And it's hard to go deep. It's hard to, admit these vulnerabilities to others. And we see this clear, like from the beginning of time, it's hard to be vulnerable. And it's hard to be vulnerable with ourselves and with others.
It does seem like, and I could be wrong, but it seems that people are accepting therapy more often, whereas I know a lot of people are resistant to talking about going deeper and feelings and emotions, and it is that a real thing, that there's a trend that it's becoming more common?
And that is one thing that I do love about social media, is that it's opening up those doors and people are expressing their vulnerabilities. Excuse me. And we'll see famous people saying, I felt like, these things were happening to me, or like I wasn't good enough and I was the number one basketball player or whatever was happening. And so these people on these big platforms saying that on social media, it's like, oh, if they can say it, I can say it too. Or maybe I'm not that bad of a person if, they're able to say things out loud that I've been holding inside. And so social media has done a really good job about that.
Yeah. Thank you for mentioning that. One of the things you mentioned earlier was sources of conflict in marriage, is the money topic. That's a big one. What do you think are some ways to deal with the differences and maybe even to navigate those conversations or find their way to, your office, for
Yeah.
instance? Yep.
Yeah, it's discovering what does money mean to them.
Mm.
And so if money, let's say that I'm the conservative partner, because earlier I labeled myself as the spendy one, we'll say the opposite. If I'm the conservative one, let's say that I had the scarcity in my home and my husband's the one that's spending a little bit more freely. If he knows what the money means to me, money means security. Money means that there's going to be food on the table. Money means that I'm going to be able to be more at peace. If he can understand what does money mean to me, and I can understand for him, spending money gives him freedom. Okay, if we can understand the meaning, now it doesn't become about money. It becomes about the meaning of money.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more about peace and freedom.
It can be.
And in that particular
Mm-hmm.
example you just mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
and then they can navigate the conversation around those two things rather than the money thing.
Yes, we don't get so defensive, because when we're getting defensive, I'm defending myself sometimes against feeling that scarcity. Feeling, if I don't have money, I'm not going to feel secure. So these, our behaviors that are screaming, it's because they're protecting us from feeling something, from being vulnerable. But if I can admit the vulnerability, now I've said it out loud, it's not as hard. And if my partner is like, oh, I get that. Yeah, that makes sense to me. That validation is so soothing. It's like, oh, okay, my partner sees me, understands me, my wants and needs matter. All of that changes the conversation around money.
Huge.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. Well, what do you think's a conversation that couples aren't having or maybe should be having? And maybe it's exactly this is going deeper, but what do you think?
Mm-hmm. Even discovering what was money like growing up for you.
Okay.
That's a huge conversation starter. It's like, oh, I had lots of money, or I didn't have a lot, or, that right there will put so much into perspective, into context. If we're able to know this is where they're coming from. Oh, he's wanting to spend a lot of money or be really generous because he associates generosity with kindness, let's say. Okay, well, can we be kind in a different way? Or, can that look can we look at that in a different manner? So I think understanding that meaning of what money means and what it was like growing up really helps us.
Do you think a lot of couples avoid that conversation?
I think they avoid it not knowing that that's a question that they should be having.
Yeah. Okay.
Because if we're just asking, what was money like growing up, that's not really a hot topic.
Yeah.
But now we start avoiding the meaning behind it because now years have passed. And maybe there's been hurt over and over and vulnerability hasn't been accepted. And so now I'm afraid to say money makes me feel secure, or I've, identified money, or I've set up money to have it mean or define me. That's hard to admit.
Yeah.
But if we can say that from the very beginning, it softens it a little bit.
What if, say, those conversations happened years ago and people forget? Like what would be a good way to bring it up again, or, to revisit that type of conversation?
Mm-hmm. So even just saying, let's say that it's been 10 years and money in my eyes have been misspent or, miscalculated or handled inappropriately according to me. Even just saying, this reminds me, or this makes me feel when I was growing up, I saw my dad doing this and it was really scary. And it just meant that I was going to be, possibly without food. And that was so scary as a little girl. That's going to be received totally different than you're spending too much money. What are you doing? You're not thinking.
Yeah.
It's like, this makes me feel like I'm 5 again. And we didn't have food on the table. And I saw my dad go out and gamble all of it, his entire paycheck. And I saw my mom, how stressed out she was. That was really scary. That changes things.
I like the way you said that is rather than it's, navigating a conversation, it's just expressing your vulnerability or your concern. So even if you've had the conversation, it's just, hey, a reminder, this is where I'm coming from right now.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that that's often received differently than an attack.
Yes, exactly. Now it's not, I'm not blaming you, accusing you, telling you how you've misspent the money. It's like, this situation just reminds me, I'm making it about me, because that's exactly what's happening.
I have noticed many couples sitting together over the years, and we're talking about money or we're planning or making decisions, and it gets heated. And then I have seen where somebody becomes vulnerable and the whole energy just softens and it becomes real. And it's a much different conversation than launching missiles or making accusations.
Yes.
So I like that.
Tenderness.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Another thing that I think about often, if there was something that I was gonna, hope to write a thesis on, but I'm also, behavioral finance to me is an interesting topic, but the topic of contentment. And I've seen people with no money, some money, and lots of money, like never feel like there's enough, or like contentment is this ambiguous thing, or they never get it, they never find it, or maybe they do have it. And what are your thoughts on that topic?
So remember when earlier I said that dopamine is what's driving us? That is also with contentment. So it's that dopamine that's telling us our systems are scanning what's going to go wrong, because our nervous system is meant to keep us alive. And so we need to be aware, oh, this didn't go right. Oh, we need to be careful. And so not being content, we're wired to not be content, to go get food, to go get what we need. But then you're at social media and all the things. And now that contentment isn't about getting food. Now it's about never being satisfied. And so it's fighting that not having contentment with gratitude. And I recently found out, because for a long time I would make a list, on my way home from work, I'm grateful for this, I'm grateful for this, and I would go through the list while I was on my way home, because yes, that's a good practice. But I really recently found out that if you want to magnify that, multiply that, it's not about giving or, telling someone that I'm grateful. It's about receiving. And so if I can think of a time when someone said, I'm so grateful for you, and you did all these things, and they express how they are so grateful, and you can feel that gratefulness coming from them, that story, my brain is easy. It will hold on to that emotion a lot quicker than me going through my list. And it's even in just remembering someone being grateful that I can start to create this attitude of gratitude. And it goes so much deeper than just making the list. So recently, my sister, I did neurofeedback on her, and my sister was so grateful. She's like, this has helped me tremendously. Thank you so much. This just, she went on and on about how it's helped her, and how me doing this for her was so big. And it made me cry. And I'm like, oh my gosh, of course, bringing that to mind right now, like all the feel good stuff's happening on the inside. And if I don't have, or I can't recall, or I'm in a moment where, I just can't remember someone being grateful like that, those feel good movies where we're watching the feel good, like someone being grateful with somebody else, that can cause that also. And so in fighting against not being content, it's watching more of those movies, or replaying over and over the feeling, remembering the story of my sister being grateful. that will start to shrink that feeling of not ever being content. But I have to be deliberate. I have to be doing it more than, once a month or once a year. It's doing it 3 times a week. And even studies have shown, even if we remember that story and those feelings for 1 minute, it will start to cultivate the attitude of gratitude.
Ah,
Isn't that amazing?
yeah. I have noticed for myself that the more that I focus on gratitude, it gets me out of any kind of a rut, like of maybe discontentment that I've had is, and sometimes it takes a moment to start thinking about like channeling those thoughts of gratitude, but it does make a difference. I'm glad you brought that up.
It really does. And I think if we're aware of that and we kind of want to stay ahead of the game, because if we have a plan, like I'm going to say, I'm going to have these thoughts Monday, Wednesday, Friday. There's my 3 days a week. If I'm intentional about practicing, we can avoid that discontentment so much easier.
So the big 2 things that I hear you saying to help combat that discontentment is recognizing that there's some dopamine and we're wired to always want to look for something, and to make gratitude a practice that we live and lean into.
Yes. And there's one more, as you were saying, that relationships and connection. If we can grow that and put as much energy into growing that we do with our finances, those connections will carry us so much further. And now we've gotten, let's say, our tribe. And so when we start to, get into that chaos, if let's say it's 10 o'clock at night and I can't reach out to you because I'm worrying about my finances, I can go to my tribe and now they're there for me. And I've cultivated these relationships, these connections, then I'm going to go from chaos to, okay, I'm a little bit calmer. I'll call Adam in the morning. That really connection is really everything in my opinion.
You're right. That is a big part. And thank you for mentioning that as well. So Kim, this has been great. Wonderful information, and I'm excited to share it. Is there anything that maybe we didn't talk about in my questions that you would love to share that maybe has to do with, people's lives with money?
I think we touched on everything. I mean, I could talk about this all day.
I'm sure. Yes.
Because money touches everything.
Yeah.
So just knowing what money means to us as individuals and what we learned, where that meaning came from, that's really important. Even if we don't share it, just being aware, what does money mean to me? And starting to notice, okay, it shows up in these places. That's huge. That's already like 10 steps forward.
Great. That seems simple enough too.
Yes.
So that's great advice from an expert. So thank you. And would you say as far as, are you taking patients, clients, and how do they find you?
Yeah. I am accepting new clients.
Okay.
I am on in Centennial Hills area, so Anna 95, and they can text me or they can find me on my website, livelightertherapy.com. So my phone number.
Therapy. Okay.
Yep.
I like that name, Live Lighter.
Yep.
And that is kind of what it feels like to go through the process of working on yourself, and is you become lighter. Right?
Yes, exactly. So, unloading with somebody is huge.
Well, thank you, Kim. That was wonderful. Thanks for your time and thanks for sharing your expertise.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.